So good evening again, everyone. Welcome to the Filmmakers Forum. For those who are attending this forum for the first time, the Filmmakers Forum is organized by the Nollywood Studies Center. The Nollywood Studies Center is a unit of the School of Media and Communication at the Pan-Atlantic University. And it's set up as a resource and research center to contribute to the development of the film industry. But we are widening our scope a little as we go along to look at the wider creative industries. So welcome. My name is Ike Chukwubiaya, and our guest today is Victor Sanchez Aghahowa. Thank you very much for agreeing to give us so much of your time this evening, Victor, and welcome on board. Victor is an old friend of ours. He has very generously in the past given some training in the school. That's one of the things we'll talk about this evening. Now, Victor is a producer, screenwriter, and director. He spent quite a bit of time in the Nigerian film industry. He has been involved in both television series and feature films. And I think some of us may have watched his web series. There are two well-known ones, How She Left My Brother and Man of Her Dreams. And also Victor has carried out quite a bit, like I said earlier, he offers quite a bit of training, generous for this time, to try to give people that's in talent or help them express their talent. And he runs a company, Tata 4 HQ Limited. He creates content, and also he has done quite a bit, like I said already, in terms of film and television projects, which he will tell us all about this evening. So welcome once again, Victor. Now, I have read all that out, and one of the first things that came to me as I was trying to put together my questions is that you are known and you are not known, okay? You are a bit of a silent worker in the background. So those who are very much into the industry have seen the torch of Victor's hands in various places, but there are many people out there who really do not know much about you. So can we start please by telling the audience briefly about yourself? Let's take it from there.
Where to begin?
Exactly, that's a tough one.
Where to begin? I'll pick off from the last thing you said about being known and unknown, so to speak. For a period, it was a bit of a deliberate choice, and I still do feel like much of the film or TV industry, the actors usually get all the attention up front. So our job is to work the back. And if you know who I am, that means you weren't looking for who was behind something. But essentially, I'm what you'd call a showrunner, but writer, director, producer, film and television, mostly television. I've worked on a few projects over the last 20 years. To answer the unasked question that I get the most, I started incredibly young, hence 20 years. But I started pretty young. I think I worked on my first show when I was about 19. So that being said, it's just making I've made a lot of television. I think I've directed over 1,000 episodes of TV, and I think I've showrun over almost 2,000 or 1,500. I'm literally just coming off a project. When I mean literally, like I just got home like yesterday. Spent the last 8 months in Edo State shooting a project that we just finished. So yeah, I'm on one of those breaks, those very short breaks. But yeah, primarily I started out as a screenwriter, then a director, then a producer, and then in television there is the office known as the showrunner, which is the best of all worlds, I guess, where you can put all the skills together. It's the person who creatively is in charge, the producer who creatively is in charge of the entire show. That is the office in which I function the most now. So that allows me then indulge myself and direct certain episodes of the shows I work on. So
great, thanks a lot. I like that business of indulging oneself. That sounds fantastic. But at the same time, I'm sure that it's a lot of work. I think for many of us, that term showrunner may not be one that we are fully familiar with. Can you expand on that a little? What exactly does a showrunner do? Just a bit of technical expertise here.
Okay, that's another it's a great question actually, because it's the closest description I can give for someone who's in the business is it's the closest thing to what the director is on a feature film in terms of responsibility, but not in terms of actual action, which means being the creative lead. So instead of speaking abstractly or using a textbook definition, I'm going to tell you my day-to-day job on the show we just finished. The showrunner is usually not always the creator, but it's the producer who's creatively in charge. So when the show goes to production, starting from the writer's room, the showrunner is in charge of the writer's room, because most times showrunners are writers. Not all the time, but at least 90% of the time, 95% of the time. You're in charge of what comes out of the writer's room. You're in charge of picking the directors. You're in charge of picking the departmental heads. You're in charge of briefing directors. So, interesting fun fact, on television, a director can't just walk on set and shoot whatever he wants or she wants. The showrunner briefs the directors and says, all right, so this episode, this is the arc. This particular episode, this sequence here, really important because that, and that. Showrunner talks to all the actors, lets you know, here's your character arc throughout the show or throughout this season or throughout whatever. And then, after briefing directors, the showrunner is in post. After the director does their cuts, the showrunner is in post giving notes on episodic cuts, post-production, editing room, talking to brands, haggling with diesel suppliers, things as weird as that, because you're in charge of creatively, but also in charge of the budget. Because again, little known fact, the writer's room controls the budget. So if you write a huge plane crash in episode 1, that may be half your season's budget gone already. That sort of thing, but things like that. So it's a very right brain, left brain job. But it's also, because I have someone in my writer's room who describes it as being a time traveler. Simply because this, in a long-running show, like say one of those 260 episode shows Africa Magic makes, one of those I just finished, you would literally be talking to the writer's room about episode 100 to 110, while supervising shoots of episode 40 to 50, while in post for episode 10 to 20, while breaking story for episode 200 to 250, while designing marketing for episode 1 to 10, all at the same time. All of that is a typical day in the life of a showrunner. So you're basically jumping back and forth in time on your show if you're doing a long-running TV show. Ordinarily, it's still creative lead in every single ramification. You best learn how to delegate, but otherwise, the gray shall overtake your hair. But it is just being creatively in charge of the show. However you want to then execute that, it's on you. A lot of showrunners have, smaller, producing committees that work under them. These two people handle this. These people handle post, but you report to me. These people, some are more hands-on. So, example, there are two shows on African Magic right now, Riona and Inache. I'm showrunner on Inache. James Omoko is showrunner on Riona. And we're both very, very, very different. So, great friend, a good friend of mine, both very different. So I'm very hands-on in the writer's room. He's not. Because he's not primarily a screenwriter. He's primarily a director. So he's very hands-on with the directing team. Very. I'm very hands-on in the writer's room. I'm very hands-on in post-production. He's very hands-on in visual effects. You know what you delegate and what you keep for yourself, but at the end of the day, it's still you are the person you're the person the studio, channel, platform talks to when they're talking about the show. So if you're working for Netflix or African Magic or whoever, the showrunner is the person they pick up the phone and call and say, I saw yesterday's episode, we didn't like it. Or, we have notes, or there's a brand coming on board, or we're cutting your budget, or we're increasing your budget, or whatever. You're the first and the last line of defense.
In other words, the buck stops with you, as they say.
You're the guy who runs the show. Okay. Sure.
Great. Now, let me just say to our audience, please, you can type your questions in the chat box. I will ask him a few questions, and then we'll take your questions subsequently. So please put your questions that you may have in the chat box. Now, let me take you up on something you just said, Victor. From all of this, I mean, I'm hearing much of this for the first time, and it sounds pretty fascinating. But at the same time, I wonder to myself, what prepares you for a function or a role like this? Because it looks like you need to have a little bit of everything. More than anything else, the ability to manage. So it sounds pretty complicated. What prepares you for this?
Okay, so I'm going to speak personally, then I'm going to speak generally. Personally, it was the fact that I grew up in a polygamous household with six sisters and a touch of ADHD. That helps. But generally, though, I'd say, yeah, it is learning a little bit of a lot. Again, like most directors in feature film, you have to know a little bit of a lot. I mean, your job as a director is to put a lot of people together and get the best out of them. So again, I love the way you framed the question because the sad part that I have seen many a potential showrunner fail at is the fact that it is not entirely a creative job. The definition is it's the producer in charge of the creative, creatively in charge of the show. So you have to be a producer. Um, so primarily what that means is you have to people management, administration. You can learn it. Anybody can learn it. I have severe social anxiety. I still manage to run a crew of 200 people who are all older than I am. So primarily it is being willing to learn a lot, a little about a lot, and also being very clear on your vision as an artist. So as a manager, you have to learn how to manage people and learn a little about a lot. As an artist, it's kind of being very clear on what your vision is. And what prepares you is nobody wakes up and just becomes a showrunner. Now, I mean, we're in the 21st century. Anybody can do it if you can get the funding. I'm not a fan of that. I'm a bit old school with that. I feel like all the great showrunners, and I'm not just talking, when I say this now, I'm talking anywhere in the world, came up from working on other people's shows. It is, I mean, television is still one of the last great apprenticeship routes, where things are not, nobody cares what degree you got to a large extent as a means to entry. It's about what did you learn, period, and if you can use that. So you come in somewhere and then you work your way up. Now, some people naturally are great multitaskers. Some people just aren't. Some people can learn it. Some people just can't. That being said, doesn't mean if you can't multitask, you can't show run. I know show running duos. I know groups of people who show run. I know shows that are run by 3 people at a time. It's a group. So it just depends. You can make it work for you. It's what prepares you is one, working your way up through a show and learning the little bits of everything, and then ultimately learning enough management and people skills to motivate the crew of people to execute a singular vision with not enough money and not enough time.
Right. Tony has put up a question here to ask, where does a recent graduate begin the journey to being a showrunner? But I will add something to that.
Yep.
Can one actually, I don't know if it exists elsewhere in the world, but are there programs where you can say, fine, I want to go to school, I want to go for training to prepare me for this, such a position?
Yes, there are trainings. At least I know that the Writers Guild of America has a very robust showrunner training course. So does the Writers Guild of South Africa. But the thing with that is, at the same time, you can't walk in off the streets and get it. You have to have produced credits. You have to be a producer, a writer, director. You have to be currently working in the business. Here's another analogy for being a showrunner. Every TV show is a business, independent business on itself, regardless of who's backing it. So every Netflix show is essentially a separate company within Netflix. The showrunner is the CEO. You have a staff, aka your crew and cast. You have deliverables, you have a budget, and you have money that you're expected to make. So nobody comes out of high school and becomes a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Of any school. Now, you could create your own company and call yourself CEO, but nobody's going to take you seriously until your company is successful. It's sort of the same thing. So if you want to get hired as the CEO of Apple, you either going to have to have worked at Apple for a while or a company that's similar to Apple for a while before you get poached. That sort of thing. So I'm trying to answer both with Tony's question
Yeah.
as well, which
Yeah.
is so for a recent graduate to become a showrunner, look, you can create a web series and call yourself showrunner, but if you don't get your hands dirty, because it's great to learn by other people's mistakes, right? Um, and which is a great, well organized school course should contain enough real world examples wherein you can learn from other people's mistakes. And then you get into the field and still learn from other people's mistakes until it's time to go out and make yours. Because you are basically asking a brand or a company or a platform to give you millions and millions of dollars or naira
Yeah.
to go tell pretend stories. I mean, it is, come on, they're not just going to give that to anybody. Um, so as a recent writer, to begin the journey, I'd say go intern at a show in which you respect the people at the top.
Yeah.
Not just because the show exists, but go for a show where you respect the people who run it. You may get behind the curtain and lose that respect, but that's a whole separate thing. But go find a show run by people you respect or show you respect and go intern. I say intern because it means going to give value just for the purpose of learning. Now, if you can get a job there, that's great. But some people get caught up especially when it's a job, with whatever their compensation is, and it's not about the value they are giving. I'll give a very offhand example. I know someone on the job I just finished came in as a third assistant director, had the least experience in the AD department. 8 months later, left the project as first assistant director with a 75% pay increase.
Wow.
You give value. That's how it works.
Okay. So from what you're saying now, really one has to work one's way up through the ranks.
Yes, but it's
If
getting shorter.
not,
It's getting shorter and shorter these days. When I
yeah.
was coming up, it took 12 years. Now I know people who've done it in 5.
Wow. Okay, now let me take you in a slightly different angle from something you said. You said that you give the example of Netflix. If you're running a show for Netflix, you're like running your own mini company in there. And
Mhm.
now, in terms of, I want to look at that now from the perspective of funding, because that has you mentioned the thing of funding one or two times here. The aspect of the script determines the amount of funds and so on, and then one has to now who finds those as a what has been your experience in getting those funds, because certainly you must have had occasions where you had to produce content that was not commissioned, where you produce something and then try to sell it. Now, what has been your experience in these various years of the industry, especially at the point when you did not have much experience yet, in terms of actually identifying and getting that funding?
Um, my personal experience would not be a great example, and I'll tell you why. Um, I grew up so poor. I started out in the industry so broke and so poor that the option of funding a project on my own just never crossed my mind ever. Like it was just not an option. Plus, also remembering that the tools of production were not as democratized as they are now. There are iPhones that have higher quality than that can shoot higher quality than half the content on African Magic right now. That didn't exist when I was coming up. So my personal strategy was to work my way up. I said it from when I was like a rookie production assistant that I was going to give 10 years of my life to building a reputation. That I was going to spend the rest of my life cashing out on that reputation. So my strategy was I went straight for commissioned work. Commissioned work being so all work can be described, film or television to a large extent, can be divided into commissioned work and licensed work. Now, licensed work is you go out and you make the work yourself and then you license it to someone. Um, Mostly television anyway. You make the content and you license it to someone. So, for instance, Man of Our Dreams, yes, I completely funded that one. Made the content, I licensed it. I've licensed it to AMC, I've licensed it to a few other TV stations. And then there's the commissioned work where African Magic or Netflix or whoever tap you and say, make us a show. Now, commissioned work is great because you don't put any financial risk, but you put your entire reputation on the line every time you step up. Every time you step up to bat, it's your first and last time because you mess up, the phone stops ringing.
Yeah.
That automatically becomes your last time. But if you're doing this yourself, you do one, they didn't like it. Oh, I've learned from my mistakes. I see what I did wrong. Let's try that again. Now, in terms of raising funding, I mentioned this because commissioning, you don't raise funds yourself. You get funded.
Right.
So entirely, once again, you're being funded based on your track record. So it's a case of what can you do, the work of your hands, not in terms of potential of what you can do, what have you done. So if there's anything I have an issue with a lot of up and coming or new age producers, writers, directors, is they keep introducing themselves as, oh, I'm trying to be a. In this day and age where influencer is a job, you can't try. You do or you don't do. You've either written some scripts or you haven't. If you haven't written anything, you're not a writer. If you haven't directed anything, you're not a director. I'm an up and coming director. That doesn't mean anything. You're either under the radar, aka I've made some work that hasn't found a large audience, or you've made some work that's found a large audience. Anything other than that, you're on the sidelines watching. So in terms of funding, if you're going to go independent, my personal experience is I work my butt off to get commissioned enough so that when I get tired of being told what to do, I take some of my paycheck and go make what I want to make. Have you found a home yet to turn the profit? No. So I have incredible respect for people who work purely independently on self-funding. I know how to make the money work. I personally just don't have the patience for the long slog that it takes to do that. All the work I've done for myself has always been as a response to the work I've been told to do. So I get commissioned 2-3 years in a row, and I've gone to too many fights with brands over Nigerians won't understand this. Nigerians don't get this. That I decide, you know what, that's fine. I'll make what you want me to make. Then I'm going to take some of the money you paid me and go make what I want to make for myself. It's always strangely worked out. Incredibly, everything I've made for myself has found an audience, and I've gotten more work from that. People have called. People who were like, "Oh, I thought you only did that. I didn't know you could do this." So if I'm going to underline this with anything, it will still always be, you get judged by the work you did, not by the work you wanted to do. So if you can't raise the money for that big project you want, shoot something over the weekend in your friend's apartment. What do you have? Make a list of the things you have. Your dad owns a petrol station. Write something about the petrol station. And that's not just a joke. That is how a film called Ojukokoro got made, and that film just got bought by Netflix. So I've seen it work. It's use what you have.
Fantastic. That's actually that is because I think things, which was I think a bit of the novelty of Nollywood when it started, but people were using what they have. If they didn't do that, they wouldn't have what we have today. So use what you have to get to where you want to get to. Now, somebody has asked a question here. Ediri is asking, what is your screenwriting process? How did you learn about screenwriting and directing? And I think that taps in a little into this thing of, well, using what you have, because the interest may be there on the one hand, but also one has to try to acquire at least a minimum of skills, some key skills. So in line with Ediri's question, well, how did you learn? How did you start out in the way you say you did?
Two questions in one. What's my screenwriting process? How did you learn? I'm gonna answer the second one first and be a typical Nigerian. But anyway, how did I learn about screenwriting? The internet. The internet. The difference was because I get asked this question a lot, and it blows my mind because I have a mentor who keeps saying he's tired of seeing dumb people with smartphones. The democratization of the internet is ridiculous now. Like, it's mind blowing to someone like me who came up when I came up, and I'm not even that old. But so it's so fairly new that I still understand how people struggle with the fact that all the information you need is out there. The same thing with these classes I teach. I try very hard not to teach anything you can find online. So I'd say step one is go out and find everything that is currently available online. It's how I learned. Step two is then going out to get real world experience, because not the same thing. So how did I learn? How can anybody learn? Go out and use all the resources online. So screenwriting exclusively. Um, the screenwriting page on Wikipedia is amazing, and I'll tell you why. Wikipedia, one of the greatest strengths is the bibliography at the bottom, right? Where the links, where the all the
Right.
people skip that part. That's the most important part.
Unfortunately, yes.
The most, but people keep skipping it. Read the article, that's great, but this is where all the information is at. If you follow every link at the bottom of the screenwriting page, I'm not going to say it's going to make you a great writer. It's going to give you enough information on whether you really want to do this or not. Because, again, speaking to kind of what I sense you were talking about, yeah, you are going to have to put in a lot of work. You're not just going to read a few web pages and ta-da, it's going to take you 2 years of your life. I've said this to everybody who's ever come through my doors, who I've ever worked with. It's going to take you at least 2 years. I've met some savants. I've met some geniuses. It's still going to take you 2 years of grinding to be able to put out a script that is producible. So go on the internet. There's a whole bunch of links to websites I can give you. Some of them are on process, some of them are on formula, some are on structure, some are on presentation, some are on, lots and lots. There are websites that are devoted to just giving you screenplays to read. Entire website, you could not read every screenplay there if you read one a day for the rest of your life. Then after that, directing too, I read a lot, but you can't learn directing by reading, right? And I say this because I say internet because you get the first base, the things where you have an idea of what it is. The internet can at least give you enough background to realize whether this is something you really want to do, put 2 years into or not. The next phase is then going out to get some real world experience. I know people who've spent a year just watching tutorials and trying tips and tricks and stuff, then eventually after a year getting together with a few friends and shooting a short film in their backyard. Any way is a way. When there's a will, there is a way. But the most important thing is study first. Apply theory. Study theory, apply. Reiterate. Make your first one. Your first one is not going to make you a star. Make your first, your second, make your mistakes far out of the public eye. Make your mistakes. And then when you know that you have some skill, then you go intern on the set. And I keep saying this because you need to then it's like studying martial arts on your own. Until you get into a fight, you don't know how good you are. You need to put yourself up against somebody else. So you acquire as much information, as much skill as you can self-teach and go onto a set. Go somewhere and test your skill. Two things will happen. You either find out you're way better than you thought you were, or you'll find out that you're still a beginner. Both options are great because here you are in an environment where there are people you can learn from. So yeah, learn from the internet as much as you can. Go out and get your hands dirty. Understand that all of it will take time and a lot of effort. And then that's the way in. What is my process? You're looking at part of my process. If you can see this, part of my process. For me, I usually end up writing stories that I have sat on for sometimes decades. But it's just finding a little bit of an idea here, a little bit of an idea there. And then you start putting it together, and then one day, you take a little bit of this, a little bit of that. This is my personal process. They come together, and boom, there's an idea. An idea. Nobody ever gets a story. You get an idea. Then my process is I get together one or two writers that I respect. Fun fact, my wife is a writer. Very interesting household, therefore. But you get a few writers that you respect together, and then you post the idea. Because it's another thing that I've learned about writers' rooms and also about being able to put your work up against other people. If you're doing it right, you lose a lot of your ego and your vulnerability. And what it means is best idea wins. It's not about, you can test an idea. You can put your work in front of people and say, shoot holes in it, and they help you make it better. And if it survives that process, then I'm like, okay, I'm onto something. Some of them just die in the first hail of bullets. It's like, nah, man, that's dumb. Why is that dumb? And here's a million reasons why. I'm like, it was nice. Oh, well, toss it out. Or I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make this work. Nope, I refuse. I'm going to double down and make this work, which you can do. But that's really my process. If it survives at least 2 rounds in the ring with some of the smartest writers I know, then I'm like, okay, I'm onto something. Let's put this in the vault. So I have about 64 shows in the vault that I may never get to make in my lifetime. I would love to make all of them, but I don't know if I will ever have the time. But yeah, I just file away ideas until, I get either commissioned and I'm like, okay, so pitch season, or I just go out and make one of them by myself. But in terms of the process, to get more specific now, in the event that the person asking the question is the screenwriter, at the idea phase, I put it in front of a writer's room of people, get holes punched in it. When I feel like it's ready to work, then I use whatever I'm feeling in the moment, depending on the story. So there are things like there are structural things like either Freytag's story pyramid. There are things like John Truby's, I don't know, 22 steps, I believe. There are all these little writer tricks to sort of like beat out a story to make sure it's sound, it has enough legs to stand on. Then from there, I break it down into an outline or a beat sheet, which is scene by scene, what's going to happen. Move the scenes around until it flows the way I want it to flow, and then I go to the first draft. And if you're a right screenwriter, you know that your first draft is always nonsense. But it's taking you so long to get there that you're just happy to have the first draft. And then your first draft is where the work actually begins. By the time you put out the first draft, you suddenly realize, why do I need this side character? What if this guy and this guy are not brothers? What if, start to rework it? But yeah, that's how I get to the first draft.
I like very much what you have said about the writer's workshop. It sort of indicates, well, not it sort of, it shows the importance really of having what I could call a bit of a support group, people you can toss your ideas with. Now, how does an individual develop this? Because it sounds to me like you have a group that you constantly carry out that kind of interaction with. So how does one, this is now speaking for those who are interested in writing, how does one really create that kind of support group? If I may just add here that this perhaps is a big part of the problem with, you could say, the industry, because somebody makes a film and woe betide you if you criticize that film. Because people, many times, they look at it as a personal attack. So it's not so much that you're writing a review, which is an area that we need to develop further, but people are not so open to that criticism. But like you said, as a writer, you need to be vulnerable. You need to expose yourself in order to improve. So how does an individual build that kind of structure?
Okay, I'm going to answer two parts of that. One is criticism, right? So one of the things I started doing with my TV shows was I started having the cast and crew interact with the audience in real time on Twitter while the show is on. A lot of showrunners don't do that because you are basically taking off your bulletproof vest and saying, painting a target on your chest. And because some episodes are going to be better, some episodes are not. There's some episodes you're going to take a beating. And then some episodes you're like, yeah, I'm really proud of this episode. And then you go out there and still take a beating. And some episodes you thought were just going to be like, it's just an episode. You realize the audience completely loves. But here's the thing. Taking everybody's opinion is not the same as taking criticism. So I have a rule. I don't take criticism from people who haven't done what I'm trying to do. Now, I don't mean that there's no such thing as a film critic. But if there's something known as a film critic, then that person is analyzing within a framework. Either it is within a traditional framework of traditional film studies or within an established system of rating, as opposed to everybody on Twitter who has an opinion. Now, as an artist, you're going to have to grow a thick skin. And some opinions are going to be very useful, and some opinions are going to be not very useful. Some opinions will be very dumb, and some will be very smart. There are some that, yeah, you will learn from, and there are some that are just plainly mean-spirited. They just want to, troll you.
Right.
You have to be able to learn from everywhere. Take your lumps the same way you take your praise. I'll say like my mentor taught me, which is you got to give praise and criticism the same energy, because it means they took their time out to watch your work. Mm-hmm. So if somebody praises you, your response should be, thank you for taking the time to see my work. And if somebody criticizes you, your response should be, thank you for taking the time to see my work. And then see what you can learn from both. You have to treat applause and boos the exact same. They are a response to your work. As long as there is a response, you're fine. Um, what is important is that you grow from it. What you don't want is complete indifference to your work. If there is response, somebody felt so upset that it took an hour out of their day to sit down and write you a 6-page review. Hey, I appreciate that. That sort of thing. In terms of finding we call it your tribe. It's beyond just writing. It's everything, directing, everything, every single part of, for me, the creative industry. You need a tribe, and I'm talking about from early on in the process. Early on in the process, you need a tribe. You need a group of people who you grow with. Because film is the only thing outside of, and that's where writing is a little dangerous. When I say dangerous, I mean in this field, it's very easy to isolate yourself as a writer. Because as a director, you need people. You need a cast and crew. As a wardrobe person, you need people to put the clothes on. That sort of thing. Everybody else needs everybody else, but the writer can just be sitting in the room writing script after script, never show to anybody, and anytime you show somebody and they say they don't like it, you feel I'm a misunderstood artist. That sort of thing. It's very dangerous. So I champion it a lot for writers, but mostly for everybody, because film is the only art form that you need a village to help you make. If you want to write a book, you can write that on your own. You want to make an album, plug a mic to your laptop, you're good. That sort of thing. Film is the only thing that it requires a small village. Plus, it is showrunner training 101 to put together a group of people to execute something, even as a writer. Usually, that's why I find the first spark of those who will become showrunners is the fact that they are writers who put together a tribe. I'm like, okay, this person has the. But it is seek out people who are on the same wavelength with you. Now, it doesn't mean on your same skill level. It basically means you resonate on the same frequency. You vibe on certain things. Because a lot of it is a matter of taste to a large extent. And that whole argument, to bring it back to the criticism thing, is why a lot of Nigerian film criticism is not respected is because I've seen critics who can't tell the difference between this is good work, this is bad work, versus I don't like this. There can be objectively bad work that I like. And there can be objectively great work that I don't like. So am I being subjective or am I being objective? You know what I mean? There are episodes of my own shows that I don't like. But the question is, I'm not making it for me, I'm making it for an audience. Now, note I did not say the audience. Because there's no such thing as the audience. It doesn't exist. So people in my generation used to sit around and laugh at Nigerian films that sing the plot in their soundtrack. My mother is not very well educated. She requires that. She requires it. If that doesn't happen, she's not interested. I put some of my stuff in front of my mother, she fell asleep. So it's who's your audience, make for your audience. And then pick up tricks from other audiences to help you with your work with your audience. But build a connection with your audience, and whether you accept criticism or not, the audience will still tell you how they feel about your work. They will. So your tribe is that first step. It's finding those like-minded people, aka they are like your focus group. They are a reflection of the audience you are talking to, or people who speak the same language and are trying to speak to the same audience. So they're your first test group before you put out stuff in front of an audience. It's an early way, and I'm going to put this one here. This is purely from experience. Lots of people get caught up in the thrill of putting work in front of an audience for the first time. Dangerous, because it's not about whether you put work in front of the audience or not. Nobody cares. What did the audience think of it? So lots of people, if they have no experience putting their work in front of their tribe, the first day they have a written credit and their film pops up on the local for the first time, they are throwing backflips. Mama, I made it, my show's on TV. That doesn't matter. Anybody can get on TV. I know that sounds a bit cold, but what I mean is, what you should be listening to is the feedback from the audience. So if you've had a little bit of experience with your tribe, and you have this one scene that your tribe have argued, no, the audience will not like this scene. If you have that, when that film comes out, the first thing you're looking for is, did that scene work?
Right.
That's how you get experience from putting your work in front of an audience, and then you can put that into the experience folder and know what to do better next time. That sort of thing. I hope I answered the question and all that.
Oh, very well indeed, very well. Actually, it leads me to another question because you said something. You said it takes a village to make a film, and you also said you've also laid a lot of emphasis on well knowing what the audience wants. I have always had the impression. Well, it's not me really, because the film industry, the films were have been referred to as popular culture, you know, and part of well African popular culture, and the key thing behind that is that well the audience is very much involved in the stories that are being told. That the filmmakers are tapping into the stories of the audience and representing that to them. That's a great deal of what is being now. Someone referred to this as looking at oneself in the mirror. There's an article with that title, "Looking at Ourselves in the Mirror," and they have attributed a great deal of the success of the industry to this. But then, where does the aspect of, you could say, teaching, perhaps? That's not a term that many people like, that you don't teach the audience, okay? But at least perhaps one perhaps sometimes wants to hold up a mirror to say, hey, look, you guys do this, you need to correct it. Or there are some certain values that are missing that, well, perhaps we could try to acquire. Do you see your work as doing that in some moments, as actually trying to portray or pass across certain lessons or values? Or is that an aspect of the dealing with the audience that you do not pay too much attention to?
That's a great question. Very easy for me to answer actually, because I'm very clear where I stand on this. I love teaching, but I'm not trying to teach my audience. I'm trying to engage with them. I try not to tell an audience what to believe. I rather have them. My biggest compliment is if someone engages with my work and leaves it questioning what they already believe and why they believe it. So I'm not going to try and tell you what to do because again, that would be entirely based on my own personal belief system. I don't believe that my belief system is better than anybody else's. I don't think I'm better than anybody else. What I'm saying is, I like to start conversations. I'm all for, I believe all forms of arts is basically holding a mirror up to the audience and saying, this is part of who we are as people. So if you think this is right, this is what you think is okay, why do you think this is okay? Would you like to change it? If not, own it with your chest. That sort of thing. So I'm a big. That's basically how I approach that. My thing is, all my work has very deep themes. If you find it, it's not hidden. It's in plain sight. But if you find it, that's great. If you engage with it, awesome. If you watch it just as a piece of populist entertainment, fine. If you engage with it to the level where you start to ask the questions I want you to ask, awesome. Um, because there's the argument that Nigeria as a country is schizophrenic enough that people don't want to turn on a TV and see their own struggle reflected back. They want escapism. They want to forget their struggle. They want that sort of thing. And I can understand that. I mean, I can understand that. Does that mean you can't show the truth? Yes, you can. But again, like some people will argue, truth is subjective. This Lagos alone, people live in, somebody who grew up in Ajigole or somebody who grew up in VGC geographically grew up in Lagos, but they didn't grow up in the same place. So everybody's going to see the same topic from their own point of view. So I'm not trying to pound out cater to any one point of view. I'm trying to say, all right, cool. So this is what school is like for somebody at Jigole. This is what school is like for somebody in VI. The question is, how do you feel about education? Do you think our system makes any sense? That sort of thing. So it's just to put the royal issue on the table and try and take away all the bias. But there is bias. So you learn to play with audience bias. I mean, that is, for me, that's what kind of the fun is subverting audience bias and, exposing biases we don't even admit that we have. That sort of thing. Oh, sorry. Do you mind if I saw a question in the chat that?
Yes,
Oh
yes.
yeah, there's a chat here. Does the creative industry have a formal and secured idea submission process at the moment? Can the industry rights organization enhance this process if we don't have one? To the best of my knowledge, we do not have one. And to be fair to both sides, it's very unlikely that we'll ever have one because speaking purely from a legal point of view, you cannot protect an idea. As weird as that sounds. You can copyright a title, you can copyright a treatment, you can copyright a synopsis, you can protect a script, you can protect an idea. So if it's the case of copyright, the Copyright Society of Nigeria exists. They do some work, as best work as they can do. Sometimes they've made some terrible calls. Sometimes they've done some great work. So in terms of like people pitching, because pitching is 95% of what I do, pitching work and going place to place. In terms of protecting yourself, most of the times it's mostly you copyright your treatment or your title. Your treatment, your title. You have to be incredibly specific for it to be copyrightable. Incredibly, and even the process of putting that together, not enough creatives, know enough about the legal process of, protecting your work. Fair enough. That one needs a lot of help. That one needs a lot of work. So any organization that can assist with that would be greatly appreciated. But the idea of like an idea submission process, no. And it's unlikely to work because even in the US it doesn't work. I can say that with full confidence. Even in the US it does not work. But what they do is they protect. You can protect the pitch. You can protect the pitch deck. You can protect synopsis. But at the idea stage, no. And one of the only reasons you can even protect it is if they respect who it's coming from. This is me being as realistic as possible. If you were a complete no-name off the street, there are those unscrupulous people who will try to rip you off. And if they are rich and powerful enough, yeah, unless you can find some really great lawyers, they will come for you. But the truth of the matter is, if you work your way up, you won't have that problem. Because again, almost everything is reputation and relational based. Almost in every business, to be really honest. But yeah, I hope I answered that person's question.
Well, actually, he has a second one. That question was from Samuel, and he's also asking if you can address whether you feel that Nigeria's current legal and policy regime in terms of protecting your creativity is robust enough to deliver. Did you get that, Victor?
No, sorry, I kind of lost you for a second there. You're asking if...
Oh, I'm sorry. That Samuel also wanted to find that. Well, he's asking, can you address whether Nigeria's current legal and policy regime in terms of protecting your creativity is robust enough to deliver financial successes for you as a screenwriter? In other words, copyright.
There's a large amount of risk needed in terms of intellectual property law. It still feels very new. It shouldn't be, but it still does. In terms of intellectual property rights, not a lot of lawyers specialize in that. Not a lot of lawyers. In my experience, again, I'm speaking only in my experience. I cannot speak for the entire industry, but in my experience, I can't say yes or no, and I'll tell you why. Because the legal system is still not the primary line of defense for most working screenwriters, period. Second of all, protecting my work or protecting my rights is not what's going to give me the greatest financial gain right now. 5 years from now, yes. 5 years from now, yes. The game is growing at a level that, yes. So let me explain what I mean. Me getting a lawyer, do we have enough lawyers who can advise me on my intellectual property rights to the level that I can maximize my profits off my intellectual property? No. I'll answer that one directly, no. And to be really honest, do I even know I need a lawyer? Yeah. That lack of knowledge gap is, for me, is more important, first of all. Is the fact that people don't understand their own rights.
Right.
Secondary to that is the fact that there are not enough lawyers that can help them if they went and sought legal advice. So for instance, I'll give an example of what I mean. When you create commissioned work, you get a lot of money. So everybody looks at, not everybody, but some people in the industry look at me and say, oh, you've been commissioned for 10 years straight. Oh my God, you must have built one whole estate in somewhere. But they miss the point that being commissioned means I have zero legal rights to the actual content. I own no character rights, no sequel rights, no nothing. I'm essentially doing work for hire. people who make licensed work have a much higher chance of, in the long run, making 200 times more money than me because they control their rights. But we are in Nigeria since we're speaking about this, and you know how much we love our short-term gain. So yeah, it is one of those things where, to answer the question, no. The legal climate right now, can it? No. But also, I think the main thing should be lots of educating the craftsmen and the artists about their own legal rights. I think that too is absolutely necessary. Oh,
Well, that leads
sorry.
us really to the. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Apologies. I'm sorry. A question just popped up that I feel I need to address. I
Please
feel like a
go
lot of
ahead.
scriptwriters in Nigeria want to become directors, producers, executive producers because working solely as a writer is not a profession you can survive on. Can you survive as a screenwriter? Yes. I know screenwriters who clear about 2 million a month. I think I can survive on 2 million a month. I'm not greedy. 2 million a month can help me. But yeah, it's just not, again, it's not for everyone. It's a case of it requires a certain level of work, dedication, and positioning that I'm going to be honest, very few people I've seen can actually do. It requires you to put, I mean, it is an industry that has almost no regulation, that requires you to build your own networks, that requires you to build your own accounting system, your own invoicing. You're going to become your own invoicing. You're going to become your own tax consultant. You're going to become your own, listen, if you're not ready to go ham, don't come near it. But if you are, if you are one of those few, and they are very few, I will not disillusion anybody, but they are very few people. But yeah, I did a 5-year bid as a screenwriter, living very comfortably as a screenwriter only. Yeah, I've never had another job outside of writing or directing or producing for the last 20 years. So yeah, you can make a great living as just a screenwriter. The idea of moving from being a screenwriter to being something else is just a fallout of our industry. Everybody has to become a multi-hyphenate. There's nothing you can do about it. There is nothing. You have to become more than just one thing. It's very rare for you to be just one thing simply because the ability to create a project from scratch requires so many people. And if you can't find enough people on your wavelength, you just have to learn as much as you can so that one day your projects can come to life. But yeah, to answer that question, yes, you can survive as a screenwriter. You just have to take the bull by the horns. If you say the money there is not enough, decide. If selling a script, if you sell your script for, I don't know, I know people who sell scripts for 100 too. I know people who sell scripts for 50K. I know people who sell scripts for 5 million. It is what it is. The whole idea is you put enough work and you have enough hits over time that your money goes up, right? So it's putting in the work. I know somebody who wrote 50 scripts in 1 year. Were all 50 great? Absolutely not. It's just not possible for all 50 to be great, right? But they were all commissioned work. If the person did 50 scripts a year at 100K, the person did a pretty good living, don't you think? And then the whole idea is out of the 50, and this person's entire strategy was, out of the 50, one will become a hit. About 3 did. So the next year, she made the same amount of money by writing about 10 instead of 50. It's just a strategy. You become your own financial consultant. You become your own. That's kind of the hard part to doing it. But if you're ready to do the work, the rewards are there. Sorry, I jumped in. You were going to say something, but
No. That was yes. Actually, I think I can understand you from what you've said now, which I think is an important lesson for all of us. That to be a scriptwriter requires some strategy. It requires certainly that one also has clearly that it's not going to be overnight.
Yes, Lord.
One has to spend time investing in the business, knowing that the first few years perhaps will be rough until one has gained a name. But then afterwards, one can be in the position to demand. I think that's what I hear you say, more or less, which truly, yes, makes a lot of sense. Now, there's another question here, which is also on stories. Tony wants to know, well, I want you to talk about the subjects of stories that interest you. Are there stories, subjects, themes that you wouldn't consider making?
No, I don't. If it's like a taboo subject, no, I don't have a taboo subject. Um, but the ones that I really don't have a taboo subject. I just don't like things that are too. This is just a personal. This is me speaking subjectively. I just don't like things that are too gratuitous for no reason. I just like, any topic, whatever it be, violence, sex, whatever it is. If it's just for no reason, I'm not for it. That being said, yeah, I just don't like things that are gratuitous for no reason. But the topics that interest me, I would say I find myself constantly being attracted to the concept of family, whatever that means to anybody. I'm slightly obsessed with the concept of family. Just the idea that someone is born into a family you did not choose, and then you make a family of friends, and then sometimes from that family, sometimes from outside, you pick someone and go make another family. The whole process fascinates me because people just accept it like this is what is supposed to happen. And anytime you say, yeah, but what if a guy doesn't want to get married? Like, oh, he must want to be a playboy. No, what if he just doesn't want to get married? What if a woman doesn't want to get married? Oh, she must have seen her parents. Her parents must have had a rocky marriage. I'm like, no, what if she just doesn't? You mean every single person is meant to get married? That's what I think. Like, oh, you have to love your siblings. Do you? Do you? You know what I'm saying? That sort of thing. Like, I'm just fascinated by the concept of family, especially in our local context. I'm also kind of obsessed with the idea of power because I don't know. I've seen it like politics. And when I mean politics now, I don't mean nation building politics. I mean politics, office politics, church group politics, church committee politics, which is always amazing. PTA politics, estate dues politics. Politics fascinates me. The idea that humans are capable of getting bonding together for such great good, but would much rather bond together for gossip and backbiting it fascinates me. So the idea that you could be head of an estate, the head of an estate, and realizing that the instant you step out of that estate, all your power's gone. You could be president of the country, but the instant you get on the plane and you're over international waters, all that power doesn't really mean that much. Just the concept of the way you give a guy a security guard uniform and all of a sudden he's walking different. Just that whole idea of what we feel power is, especially in a country like ours where military regime and so many other things kind of broke our minds a little bit as to what power is and the idea that power is entirely by violence and force. Yeah, those are two topics I don't choose to. I just constantly find myself coming back to again and again. Power and family. I think that kind of runs through all my work. Aside from the fact that 99% of all my leads have been female. Again, not by design. 99% of the leads, 20 years of work, 99% of my leads are women. Just because I think women are more interesting than men. Please don't throw anything at me. I just think they're more interesting than men. I'm just saying. I think they're mentally tougher than men. If well directed,
True.
if
I
all
agree
energies
with
are
you there.
directed, they have a lot to deal with, and those who deal with it gracefully and with poise are worthy of study and emulation. But that being said, yeah, kind of like those are the things I tend to gravitate towards. Stories that involve family, power, you know, that sort of thing.
Okay, something you said earlier while you were talking, you said, well, one of the objections that sometimes people put before you when you present, or rather when a writer presents something is, well, Nigerians won't understand or get this.
Yep.
Now, of course, for commissioned work, yes, okay, fine, you can't do much there. But for your own licensed work, have you actually, in some moments, taken that, in quote, risk that I want to test this? I don't know how people are going to take it, but I want to do it all the same. Has that happened?
I've 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 done it in every I've done it in every single thing I've done, commission or otherwise. I just really love doing subversive. So even in the commission works when they said they wouldn't get it, I'm like, all right, fine. I'll just sneak it in some other way. Um, I think there is a pandering, an almost insultive attitude towards the Nigerian audience from certain
Yeah.
producers. where they just think the Nigerian audience is stupid, which I'm not even, do I need to discuss that? I don't need to. But there's a certain condescension, which is completely unearned. So, yeah, I ignore it. What I just translate it. What they mean is don't make this too intellectual. We're trying to hit as broad an audience as possible. That's what I translate to me when they say that to me. So I try not to take it personal, and I've been hearing it for 2 decades. So I don't take it personal anymore. I just say, oh, you're worried that this might be too intellectual and cut out a certain amount of your audience. Don't worry, we know how to get those guys. You know what I mean? But that's what led to years and years of, and thankfully, I have never made one of these shows where, oh, the people in the house are intellectuals, then you have the gate man and his girlfriend who are representing.
Yeah.
Oh God. So I've tried to do the reverse a lot of times, where we have the house staff be more intelligent than the people who actually own the house. See, that's how we try to stick stuff in there. But yeah, that sort of thing. I think they're just worried about hitting a bigger demographic, and if you can find a way for them to hit it, they're fine. They'll let you do what you want to do. As long as you make them money,
Yeah.
you'll be fine. Give them the eyeballs, you'll be fine. If you don't mind, there's a question that's been here for a while that I just wanted to
Yes,
speak
I
on.
was going to come to. Yes.
What's the process for directing actors with varying experience levels? Um, I think the only experience level that I really require from my actors is self-awareness. There are some actors who are very aware of their process and some who are still in the beginning and just beginning to learn their process. So I'll give you a concrete example. There are some actors who require extensive rehearsals, and there are some actors who give you everything on the first take. Especially theater actors. Theater trained actors tend to do a lot of intellectual processing, and they want to talk to you about it, and we do all that talking and all that, so that when they arrive on the day, take one is everything. After take one, they're almost even physically exhausted. And then there are some who have to do this twice or 3 times to, try it out the first time. I didn't really like how that felt. Plus, when they were prepping it, in front of the mirror or, by themselves. They hadn't played off their co-star. So when they do it with their co-star, they're like, oh, wait, okay, I have to adjust a few things, that sort of thing. It just takes experience to know how to handle it. So what you tend to do is so for that specific example, for instance, you call a rehearsal. The theater trained person knows that at a rehearsal, I'm not giving everything. It's a rehearsal, I'm going to go half speed. And you tell the less experienced actor, go full speed. It's a rehearsal, I just want to see what you're going to do so I know how I'm going to, And one person goes full speed, one person goes half speed. When they're ready to take 2, it's theater guys take 1. But now the actors have enough time to adjust their performance. That sort of thing. I use that as a concrete example of what I mean. It's more the experience of the director that will allow you. And that, and also the vulnerability of the actor, if they are willing to, they trust you enough to let you into that process so you can then gauge what each person's process is and then figure out a strategy to work in between. Again, sort of like with Tribe, I find that there are certain actor types, personality types I gravitate towards. I tend to find myself working with actors who I eventually later find out are writers or producers or directors. I don't seek them out. It just happens all the time. I find out, oh, you're a writer. Oh, that makes sense. Because they tend to, I like actors who have like proper training. Out of the training, I don't mean they have to have some certificate from some school, but they believe in training. They've gone out and saw training. They put in some work, whether it's self or whatever. So what has happened is, because as a writer, I like having those long conversations about the character because I'm a writer-director. So I wrote a certain way, cast an actor, then I got to rework that character to fit that actor. So we do that work together. So I like getting feedback from the actor and all that. Then we go on set and we make it work. So in that process of the conversation, you figure out, oh, this is how this person's process is. So as a director, your job is then to modify the shoot process so it brings out the best in all performers. I hope I answered your question.
Fantastic. Now, there's another question out here. Someone is asking, are there any books you would recommend in the learning process for screenwriting or directing or producing? You have already pointed to the Wikipedia page.
Screenwriting. There is a book, the basis of all screenwriting books, Sid Field's, the book called Screenplay, I believe, by Sid Field. I usually use that one. It's the foundation book as far as I'm concerned. Screenplay by Sid Field. There is a book by Blake Snyder called Save the Cat. That's a pretty good book. It's a different style from what I use, but it's a pretty good book. There's a book by Robert McKee, Story. But if you're a starting screenwriter, do not. If you are just starting, stay away from Robert McKee's Story. Story is sort of like the masters of screenwriting. I believe you need to get your bachelor's first. Story is not the book you just read through and say, now I know how to write. No. Stories, you've written a few things and now you want to move to the next level. Let me see. Books. I'm sure I will be able to send in a list of stuff after this that you could share if you wanted to.
Okay.
There are also some websites. There are some websites that are great as well. There's some websites that are great. Yeah, that's for writing. For directing, there is, oddly enough, I don't know why I have this on my desk. I know why I have this on my desk. It's called Directors Tell the Story. It's available on Amazon. Bethany Rooney, Mary Lou Bell, especially for those who want to direct for television. It's one of the most complete directing books I've ever seen. I bought like 20 to 30 copies and I've been giving it away to people who I feel could become directors one day, or I've seen their work and feel like they can be, they are contenders. I will send a list of also for books for directing.
Yes.
For producing, I always tell people if you need a book for producing, there's one book, I can't remember the title, I'll find it. But outside of that, producing is one thing I say, go and intern under a producer. Because producing outside this country will frustrate you. I remember I went to a film school outside this country, which I dropped out of, I'm not ashamed to say. Because I got there and their entire concept of producing was great for their system. Would never work here. Ever. Nigeria is such a weird place that producing one of the things you need to get your boots on the ground to learn how it gets done here. As much as we are the 419 capital of the world, we still have such a weird honor trust-based system that is insane. Like if you've ever been in a market, like walked in the back of the scenes of a market, you realize how much of it is honor-based in a country that obviously everybody believes has no honor. It's so weird. But yeah, I'd say go intern with a producer. Go intern producer for like 2 months. You will learn more than any books will ever teach you. But there are, I think, 1 or 2 books that could, teach you how to do this on a, professional level. So in case it's Netflix that's calling you, you know what to do.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Victor. Now I have a question here from Sule.
Yeah.
Sule asks, can you please speak on the dynamics of selling a story Bible to a network, studio, or production company where you are not involved in the production process? Does that even happen?
No. That doesn't happen anywhere in the world. That I'm aware of. Again, I'm speaking within my experience. That I'm aware of doesn't happen. Just does not happen. I'll tell you why. Because let's talk about what is a story Bible. A story Bible essentially is a document that encapsulates the show, right? Again, there are 2 things. There's a story Bible and there's a show Bible. 2 very different things, right? People use them interchangeably. They are not the same. So with a story Bible, the odds of you selling a story Bible are almost 0 to none. Because if you are in the development process, the story Bible is what you submit to the network, the studio, the production company when development is over. It's the last thing they pay for before they start paying for actual scripts. So the process is in development is there is the idea process, the ideation, right? There's the idea, wherever that may come from. Now, if you are a big-time producer, a big-time writer, you may walk in and make a pitch, and they say, we like your idea. Now we want you to develop this idea. You get a writer's room together and you start to develop the idea. They need to have inputs. Because all these your fanciful ideas of by episode 6, we're going to do a time jump to 40 years later. Yeah, if they don't want that to happen, that's not going to happen. So they put in enough inputs, and in the end they say, all right, record all your thoughts into, because that, remember what I said, you can't protect an idea, you can't really sell an idea.
Right.
What they're going to buy off you is the story Bible. This is the end of development process. You hired me as your head writer, as your showrunner, whatever it is, to develop an idea for you. Here is your idea. Here's a story Bible. Give me my payment. Now, you can leave at that point, which I'm suspecting Sule might be talking about, when it says not involved in the production process. You can leave at that point. Your job is done. You've developed. Here's your developmental fee. Goodbye. Happy trails. And then they go off to somebody else to be showrunner. It's happened many times. That has happened many times. But you walk in the door and say, I have this idea. It's already fully thought out and it's in a story Bible for your convenience. Buy it. Nope. One of the reasons why they won't even touch it is because if you have this, how long have you had it and where else have you shopped it? If you've shown this to 3 other people and they said no, 3 other people know the show I'm about to put on the air. So they can counter program against me and kill my show. So, I'm just saying. I've never seen it happen. Again, I'm not saying it can't happen, but I've never seen it happen. And outside this country, like say the States or SA, it would never happen. But yeah, it is possible for you to, develop an idea for someone or develop an idea or have an idea, have someone buy, pay you to have, expand on your own idea and sell them a story Bible and not be involved in the production process. That is possible. But a knowledge of the production process, to me, is almost necessary. Not 100%, but necessary, because then you can make a show that is producible. There's a way you can pitch it that they'll be like, all right, this person knows. Because like I said, the story determines the budget. So if you pitch them an idea that is obviously going to make them 2 billion naira, but it's clearly going to cost them only 60 million, you're a star.
Good one. Good one. Well, we have another question here. We are getting to the end of the show, but we still have a couple of questions. Oge wants to know, what is your take on Nigerian language films now?
Yep.
Would you make a Benin language production? Do you think we're going to be seeing more Nigerian language films in our cinemas?
I think we're going to see more Nigerian language films on streaming before they come to cinema. When they become popular on streaming, then they go to cinema. We are too tribalistic. The instant, like, if I'm going to make a Benin, to answer our questions, I'm going to make a Benin language film just because. This show I just got back from shooting, I shot in Benin, cast a lot of Benin actors. I'm from Benin, and my dad passed. The day I got the call that I could take the show to Benin was the day my dad passed. And my dad was a chief in Benin, and so I have personal ties to making a Benin language film. It's personal for me. But at the same time, I would take that show to streaming. I would take that film to streaming before I took it to cinemas. Simply because we do have a kind of a monkey see, monkey do thing. So if I'm going to put a Benin language film in cinemas, yes, I'm going to title it and all that, and it's going to be a bit like Apocalypto or whatever. But if I do my marketing right, it's the Benin people who are going to rush out to see it, right? And what's going to happen is, if it is that much of a hit and the Benin people keep talking about it, there is a certain segment of our people who are going to go, what are they talking about? They go see it. And there's a certain segment that's going to go, yeah, why are they making such a big deal? It's because they are own. Why are they? Let's go and do our own. And then people are just going to, yeah, that's what it's going to turn a bit negative because we are a bit tribalistic. But if it's known to have worked on its own merit somewhere else, oh yeah, then, because you know how it is now, some things do better when you export them, then re-import them back in. So it may take a while, and also the film will have to be seen on its own merits first. That's my personal belief. I don't know about seeing more Nigerian language films in cinema. Possible. I can't speak on that. I don't know. I don't control that button, but that's a good thing.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. There's a question here I just saw that is a big one.
Okay.
The plan to address the issue of royalties for creators on
Exactly.
stage, which could multiple reruns. Let me talk about this. Let me explain. You don't get what you deserve. You get what you negotiate. I'm upset about the fact that you have to understand that royalties is not in the Nigerian business. It doesn't exist. Let's listen. It's not about what should exist and what is right and what is wrong. It does not exist. Growing up in Benin City, for instance, until 2003 or 4, there were no traffic lights. They did not exist. So you come to Lagos and see people driving with traffic lights, and you go back and you try to start telling people drive with traffic lights. They don't exist. Nobody here knows how to drive with traffic lights. You know what I mean? There are some things that, yeah, you know that there is a better way, but it does not exist. Now, should it exist? I'm all for it. Absolutely. Does it exist? No. So the conversation we should have is not how to tell people to put back royalties. They can't put it back. It wasn't here in the first place. What we need is the first person to start paying our royalties. But the question now is, why don't they pay our royalties? How do royalties work? Right? For royalties to work, you need a rating system. We don't have one. That may sound cold, but we don't have one. It's just the truth. We do not have one. So if the very metric used is not there, then it's not there. I do feel, so for instance, all these people, the same people, I think it's OJ, and I'm not talking about you, OJ. I'm talking about writers in my business who go around shouting about, there are no royalties. Oh, yes, let us go to Netflix. Netflix will save us all. Netflix doesn't pay royalties. That's why Netflix paychecks are so big, because they pay you out up front. You know what I mean? So they don't pay royalties either. So it's one of the situations where it's a which came first, the hen or the egg. We do need it. We need the royalty system. We do. We absolutely do. I think we do. But that is us introducing a system from scratch. You can't tell somebody to pay royalties who doesn't even know what royalties are. So it's a ring of roses between the guilds policy, in terms of when I mean policy, I mean literal policy, like a bill has to be passed. The Broadcasting Commission, it takes 6 to 7 key players to sit down and make sense of this. Will that happen right now? Absolutely not. But nobody has the power to tell Ebony Life, stop paying royalties. It's just not going to happen. They don't have to, so why should they? Again, it sounds cold, but that is just the truth of it. There are people who, might, ethically want to start paying royalties. There is even no legal system for them to do that. How do they calculate the royalties? What percentage should they pay? Even if they wanted to, like ethically, morally, I feel an obligation to pay you my writer's royalties. So it is a job that needs to be done, but please understand it's going to take a lot of us pushing a lot of weight over a few years to get us there. It cannot just happen overnight. But that is my stand on royalties. Be it on a series, be it on a film, be it on whatever. It's something that needs to be done, but also be aware that people working behind the scenes working on it, but it will take a while. It will take a while. I have the conversation with Mahmoud Ali Balogun. No, I will not. Personally, I will not. For personal reasons, but I'm going to skip that one. But yeah, no, I will not. Again, he is one of the participants in a long chain of participants that need to get together. People need to come to that table and put their egos aside. The problem is almost everybody who runs an agency that can make this work has an ego the size of a building. And the actual bit, well, let's not even go there. But it's a collective effort. It's not about people yelling at each other who's right and who's wrong. It's people coming together and saying, all right, listen, let's try and make this work. It needs such a need for people to move royalties aside. You're supposed to protect these rights of royalties. No, we don't have rights of royalties. We don't have it. So we talk about protecting. We don't have it. We can't protect what we don't have. We don't have it. It doesn't exist. It's much like saying, what is that thing in Nigeria? The right to, what is that thing that is in our constitution that we don't have? At my age, I can still go down the road and be stopped by police because I have dreads. There's nowhere in my constitution that dreads is a crime. Stop at least twice a day. It's the truth of the place we live in. There's how it's supposed to be, and then there's how it actually is. We need to face how it is and decide, all right, from how it is, what do we do now?
Well, one of the first steps towards this, establishing this system of protecting royalties, will it not be tied to something you have already said, which is that people understand the system, first of all, the whole business of contracts, and then in the establishment, at least they ensure that they do have a contract in which much of this is spelled out. Well, that's a necessary first step, isn't it?
Yes, which is why I started my answer with, you don't get what you deserve. You get what you negotiate. So there are people who are going to say, there are people who would understand it and say, I need my royalties. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so there are going to be people who are going to say, oh, I need royalties behind this. And the people who are going to be able to pull that off are going to be people like me. But conversation is not about people like me. It's about the new people. It's about, you know what I mean? It's about making it an industry norm. It's not just only big players who can, because of their position, then ask for certain. So it now looks as if it's a, you got what I mean? Like it's a honorific or it's a special consideration. It shouldn't be. It should be a norm. You know what I mean? But I can negotiate and say I want royalties. If you sell this to one or two people, I want 20% of anything that comes from, and I can get it because I know that I can. So it goes back against that thing we're talking about, educating the people, the craftsmen and the artists about, listen, this is possible. You can get this if you do this, this, that, and that. Because the same way you can ask for it is the same way the producer can say no, unless it's policy. If it's not policy, then they can straight up just say no. I want, oh yeah, I did so much work on this show. I need, because I created the show, I need 5% of all ad revenue in perpetuity. No. If it's still a private enterprise, he can say no, or she can say no, unless it is a policy. That sort of thing. So yeah, I do agree, yes. Understanding contracts and understanding what is legally possible and legally impossible. Absolutely, yes, would be a great first step.
Well, our time is running out. Let me take one last question. I don't want us to go away without talking about your web series. What motivated you to start that? Because the first one you did, I think it was perhaps one of the first ones on the shores, How She Left My Brother. It was an interesting approach, really. So what was behind that? And is it something that you will do more of?
It was the first web series to run a full season in Nigeria, yes. Closely followed by Ndani's first show. What motivated me, like I said before, it was after working on Tinsel for many years, I wanted to go out and make a sitcom. I'm kind of obsessed with sitcoms, like obsessed. And so I wanted to go and make a sitcom. That was one. I wanted to just make what I wanted to make. The kind of things they told me the Nigerian audience was not ready for. Two, it was born out of Use What You Have. The whole thing was shot in 6 hours. The whole season was shot in 6 hours. It's a fixed camera. It's one room. You know what I mean? Like, use what you have. I had a relationship with actors because I've been a writer-director on Tinsel for a few years before that. So I called up a few of my friends, threw them in one room, minimal preparation, off we went. Second reason I did it was my first test as a showrunner. Nobody wanted to give me the chance to showrun. I'd written and directed for a bit, but nobody wanted to trust me to showrun, which I completely understand. So I said I have to go learn how to follow a project all the way from the beginning, all the way through all the producing stages, all the way through post, all the way through delivery, all the way through release and distribution. So I sort of, ran it, and that was the first time I'd done a show. And immediately after that, off the back of that, I got a call from Ebony Life to come run a show for them called Dowry. So it didn't immediately make me any comeback cash from YouTube, but it got me my first show running gig on television. So that's what was behind it. Make content I wanted to make and prove to myself that I could show run. Will I make more? Interesting. Will I make more? Fun fact, I've been talking about it a lot because
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, hello. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. So you were saying, will I make more? I said I've been having conversations about that because the lead on the show I just finished was the lead on that show. So this makes it what? How many years we've been working together now? More than 10. And she was like, okay, so I'm ready to go back in for more of that. I'm like, it's been it's been almost, next year we'll make it 10 years since we did that. So we are thinking of doing one for next year, like a 10-year thing. We may do another season just for laughs, not for, but yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I enjoyed it. It was very catchy, really. It was very, very interesting. Well, thank you so very much, Victor. And OG here says, well done on Enake. So much truth. Everyone has a stone in their family.
Yes, yes, yes. He's
So thank
entirely
you
based
so
on
much,
Barbados.
Victor. Okay. Thank you so very much for giving us so much of your
Anytime.
time, and this
Yeah.
has truly been enlightening. Enlightening. I think you have given so many pointers on areas that at least we, as an educational institution, needs to also pay attention to in terms of structuring the kind of formation we give. So thank you once again, and I hope that it will not take so long before we see you again, like you did from the last time. I
Likewise,
shall come
likewise.
knocking. Don't worry, I shall come knocking.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
And thank you all also, all our audience, for being with us this evening, giving us also so much of your time this Saturday. I hope you have all enjoyed this as much as I have. And well, we will be making putting out shortly the projected conversations we'll be having in the month of April and May as well. We have other guests that will be coming. So Victor, thank you very much once again.
Sure.
And the best of luck in the show that you are going to begin to promote very soon, now that you have finished the shooting and all of that. And okay, thanks a lot, Victor.
Not
Thank
a
you very
problem.
much.
Thank you all so much.
Take care
All right.
now. Right.